And now we see Vice President Pence and Karen Pence, who have decided to carry the mantle of tradition and chosen to come and attend this inauguration when President Trump elected not to do so.
And Vice President Pence has assumed many of the duties that we would traditionally expect of a president in the 2 weeks since the assault on the Capitol, greeting members of the police and being visible, being present during all this.
Well, there's probably not been one more loyal ally to President Trump than Vice President Pence. And before 2 weeks ago, any kind of rift, any daylight, any division would have simply been unthinkable. And yet there he was in the Capitol on January 6th, had to be rushed out by Secret Service as this marauding gang of rioters and insurrectionists beat down the door, literally. And we now know with some dangerous intent, and that seems to have riven the relationship between Vice President Pence and President Trump. I want to bring Hallie Jackson, if she's with us, into this conversation because it's so stark. I think if you go back, Hallie, and you probably have them all memorized and looked at every speech that Vice President Pence ever gave, I don't know if he ever said and had any speech that did not mention in quite flattering terms President Trump. And yet now he has chosen on this final day to come here for the inauguration of the new president as opposed to attending the going away party at Joint Base Andrews that President Trump had organized.
In speech after speech, Savannah, the vice president didn't just mention his boss, President Trump. He would go out of his way in very lavish terms to give him the credit for whatever the vice president was there to conduct the business of. That's the kind of relationship that they had, loyal every single step of the way until January 6th. And it began when the vice president was back here at the Capitol. He was here for that counting of the Electoral College vote. And throughout the hours that he was in a secure room, according to sources that I've talked to, President Trump did not once reach out to the vice president. And it sounds like he is several leaders getting introduced here at the west front of the Capitol. At no point did President Trump reach out. That angered the vice president. He spoke about that to some of his friends and colleagues about how after all of this, after all the loyalty, this is what happens as the president was then sending out angry tweets about the vice president. It is so significant that he is here today. He actually left a letter, we understand, from a White House official for Vice President-elect Kamala Harris at the White House. We know, of course, based on our team's reporting, that President Trump also left a note for President-elect Biden. That, we're told, was left in the Oval Office by an aide at some point. So that is waiting, of course, for the president-elect when he arrives. And we're watching now this split-screen moment. I'm not sure if we have a shot of Air Force One arriving down in South Florida. That is where President Trump will call home for the foreseeable future. And down at Mar-a-Lago, you have about 100 of the president's supporters who have lined the route. As we see right now, this split screen, he is now going to be disembarking, getting off the plane for the last time as Air Force One. And he will be greeted by some of his supporters who have gathered for him there in Palm Beach. A very different scene than what we're seeing here at the west front of the Capitol, where there have been glimpses of bipartisanship. Congressman Jim Clyburn, for example, taking selfies with Congressman Steve Scalise. You had the Bushes walk immediately over to Clyburn, for example, congregate with them. Supreme Court justices, including Justice Sotomayor here, she, remember, will be the one who will be swearing in Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. A real moment of the first Latina Supreme Court justice, and of course the first woman of color to become the vice president. As we see the vice president and his wife now come out onto the balcony to a round of applause as I look behind me here. Everybody's standing and watching Vice President Mike Pence and Karen Pence as he assumes those traditional roles. He was here. He was the one delivering that speech in the moments after the insurrectionists took over at the Capitol. Once the all clear was given, it was Vice President Pence who came out and said democracy must prevail. It was Vice President Pence who returned to the Capitol to thank those National Guard troops that have moved in, not President Trump. It was the Vice President who over the last 4 days has been traveling, thanking the troops, and conducting the duties of the office. Savannah.
And Hallie, that is the split screen that no one had exactly expected. Vice President Pence at the inauguration and the open door to Air Force One for the final departure of President Trump and the First Lady as they arrive in Florida.
56 minutes left in the Trump presidency, and it is remarkable. We talk about the transfer of power, and literally at 12 o'clock, 11:59. all the powers, all the weight, all the duties, nuclear codes, things that most of us don't have to think about on a daily basis, suddenly land in your lap.
But it's different in terms of logistics, because in every inauguration, except for 152 years ago, the outgoing president and the incoming president were there in the same place, and there was, in a way, a literal handoff. That won't take place here, but the business of government will continue, and arrangements have been made so that there will be continuity of government. And at the moment that the oath is sworn on the old Biden family Bible, in about an hour from now, we will have a new president. And perhaps as we look at this open door, President Trump has taken a long last look around and saying goodbye to some of the staff members who work on Air Force One and who he's gotten to know over these last 4 years.
It's certainly a journey that Donald Trump has made many times aboard this plane or its twin plane between Washington and Florida, spending a lot of time at Mar-a-Lago. And there is President Trump. And a rather elaborate send-off at Joint Base Andrews a few hours ago. We don't know what sort of greeting. We see the armored vehicle there right at the steps, so we don't, well, let's see what happens.
And yes, Melania Trump has changed into her Florida fashions for the occasion. She left Washington, and it's cold for the sunny skies of Florida, and has changed her wardrobe accordingly as they will drive off. But as you mentioned, 60 minutes and counting until we have a new president.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.